Welcome to another episode of Junior Level to CXO. And today is the first episode in Finance to CFO. And today we have Mr. Pulkit Agarwal. He's my junior from my college. And so nice to see that he's now such a young age at the level of CFO in a reputed company. So I'll just introduce him. He started his career with Fidelity Investment. Then he was at Trefis, then at Karma Capital. Then he joined Simpa Energy, and then at a very young age became a CFO at Calpro Specialities, and now he is Group CFO at a listed company, Creative Graphics. So thank you, Pulkit. Thanks for giving us time. Welcome.
Thank you, Amit ji. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. You are my alumni, much senior to me, so very happy to speak with you. And let's see, I'll try to add value to this conversation in whatever way possible.
Thank you. So to start with, Pulkit, so why did you choose a career in finance?
So, my story begins like the stories of many people in India. I was in school, and there were only two options. It was either engineering or medicine. And I chose engineering because I was more number oriented. I didn't like the idea of learning too much and memorizing a lot of organ names and drug names. And hence, I chose engineering. It is only when during engineering that I realized that I didn't want to be a software tester. I had multiple jobs by the third year of my engineering, but I had a very clear idea of what not to do. And software testing was not one of the things I was keen to do. So the path open seemed to be an MBA. I appeared for MBA exams. Again, uh, as is usual in engineering colleges, हम अपने सीनियर्स से बात करते हैं, वो जो गाइडेंस दे देते हैं उसके हिसाब से we chart our way forward. So I had a couple of great seniors and colleagues, classmates who were preparing for MBA, and I also did that. Fortunately, I got into Fortunately, I got into XIMB, which is where I really found that I loved finance. Finance is both challenging as well as enriching because once you start understanding economics and you understand um, the financials of companies, you start getting a lot into corporate strategy, and there is no end to it. You learn every day. You uh, basically start getting a grasp of how the world works, and that is how I got into finance. So uh, during my internship, I got to work with Fidelity Investments, who were impressed and kind enough to offer me a replacement offer. And that is how the journey started. I worked with the on the Lal Street on the sell side as well as the buy side for the first half of my career, and then eventually thought that it is good time to actually manage a company. So got an opportunity to work at a startup which is Simpa Energy, where I was able to perform in tough times. We got it acquired and lead it into an M&A, and that is how I got into a leadership position at a young age. So that's my story in short. A part of it is knowing what not to do, and a part of it is luck, and a big part of it is good guidance by mentors uh, and seniors.
Very nice. So one thing which comes out is that you took a risk. You took a risk by coming from a premier institute, working in good companies, and then you took the risk of joining a startup just so that you can join at a leadership level and gain more knowledge. So taking risk, how important is it to reach the CXO level? Because there is a saying, there is a research that only 0.5% people they reach the CXO level, and you were able to do that at quite a young age. We'll also ask you secrets of what do you continue doing to keep looking young. But what are the others? So apart from risk taking, what are the other secrets of success? But before coming to that, just to give a perspective to many of our viewers would be from finance background, but many of them may not be from the finance background. So, contrary to the perception that a finance professional just has to work on numbers, like just do like a geek, just crunch numbers. In today's scenario, a finance professional can walk into either a sales meeting or a board meeting, or even at the factory where the production is going on, and can immediately list down the financial implications of what is happening, of or what is not happening. So some thoughts on that, like you also mentioned that it's very challenging, and corporate strategy is something as a finance professional that you add value to. So for the sake of listeners who may not be from the finance background, how powerful is the finance role? Because without finance, no company can work. Without sales, it can work using the personal connects or references or whatever. But without operations and also without sales, so some thoughts on that, that how important is finance in in corporate success?
Sure. So finance, as you rightly said, is a little bit about numbers, but numbers is only a very small percentage of overall impact on the profile. You obviously need to be good at numbers in the finance field. You cannot be a CFO or a finance controller and be bad at numbers. That is the baseline. If you are not good at numbers, that disqualifies you from the finance field. But that does not make a good finance leader, right? You may become an accountant, but not a good finance leader. In a finance leadership role, finance is the first part, but leadership is the second part and the bigger part. You, as a finance leader, you cannot just speak numbers. You have to understand to how to read the room. You have to understand how to read the other person and make yourself understood to the other person. So communication is a big part. Interpersonal skills are another big part. There are there are finance leaders who are successful because they are able to translate complex financial matters into simple words. Because a CEO or a board member might not have as deep of a finance knowledge as a CFO, but that does not mean they do not understand the company or they do not understand strategy. They rely on the finance leader, the CFO, to make that complex thing simple enough. The other thing that is very important is to understand multiple things in the business. You cannot just be a finance guy. You cannot just be a numbers guy. You have to understand people, you have to understand processes, and you have to understand what is behind the numbers. So you have to understand a little bit of marketing, how it works, what is the impact. You cannot just look at marketing as a number on a spreadsheet. Similarly, you cannot just look at sales as a number on the spreadsheet because those numbers are the result of some action. You have to understand what is the strategy, how it is getting translated to those numbers. And same thing for HR and every other things. One very good thing I read early on in my career is you have to understand everything, and learning mindset has to be there so that you can interact and understand and make yourself understood to a lot of stakeholders in the room.
Very nice, very powerful, and which is very contrary to the perception that finance is a very boring job, and you just sit on your desk and you keep on crunching numbers. So, like you mentioned, that you have to understand so many things, sales, marketing. So, as I understand, you have also been out on sales calls, or you have been out on doing survey before opening branches or geographical expansion. So, some thoughts and anecdotes, if you could share, Pulkit.
Yes. So, see, as a CFO, I like to believe that the CFO is the biggest salesperson in a company
Very nice.
because the CFO is selling the company as an idea to the board members, to investors, to bankers, to potential vendors, even to large customers who sometimes visit our factory or offices, right? So in a leadership position, you have to be a salesperson. You have to be approachable. You have to be convincing enough. You have to be very good. convince her. You have to convince with your ideas. I have personally been on sales calls. I have because you have to understand when we are talking about. So, for example, in my one of my previous roles, we were talking about launching in a new state, right? When the CEO comes up with that idea, how do you vet that idea? You can do number crunching,
Correct.
and the numbers can be beaten into uh, you know saying okay, but you have to be on the ground to understand what's behind those numbers. Is it even possible? So I have been on sales calls. I have been on missions where I went into a geography and did market surveys, which are something which was something that was taught to us as in a marketing survey. So I designed that survey. I myself got responses on those surveys. Then I designed a team which would get more responses on those surveys, so that there is quantitative data on which we can rely on and understand whether a particular state would be a good market for our products or not. And this is something that is not usually asked of a CFO. But if a CFO can do this and take this initiative, uh, their voice will be the most convincing in a room. That is how you become the most trusted person in the room, because you can speak and you can understand the language that other departments also understand. If you can get a 200 response survey, that is unquestionable. Then it is clear which direction the market is going and whether our hypothesis is correct or not. Otherwise, it is a numbers versus a hunch kind of a discussion where the marketing guy or the CEO has a hunch and you are coming from the opposite side, uh, saying that we don't have budget for this or the market opportunity does not look as convincing. How do you break that bottleneck? Right? So we did that survey and it came out with pretty good results. Within the state, there were some areas that were good, some areas that were not as good. So, and that was really appreciated also. So, those kind of things you have to do. Uh, you obviously are not expected to sit on a chair all day, stare at spreadsheets. That is not what happens at a leadership position.
So there are two things which come to my mind, Pulkit. One, is the CFO a devil's advocate? One. Second, see, a car can only be driven faster only if it has good brakes. So you can accelerate, but unless the brakes are good, you would not want to accelerate fast. So does the CFO act like a brake so that the other stakeholders have this confidence that yes, they can drive faster because there is a person who will apply the brakes when it is required in everybody's benefit. Otherwise, sales can just crash, going head on into newer geographies and expansion and without taking care of everything. So is it more of a devil's advocate or is it a brake in the car so that the car can manage to run fast?
Those are very well put examples. I think the CFO's role is a mix of both. The CFO at times has to act as a devil's advocate, because you cannot obviously be a yes man. We work with very influential and powerful people, the CEO, the managing director, the board of directors. These are people who have accomplished something in life, probably more than a CFO has in a corporate environment. These are people who have run businesses, who have achieved millions of dollars of sales and built businesses. But you cannot be a yes man. That is not the way to operate as a CFO. In many cases, you have to take on the responsibility of challenging the hypothesis or the hunch that the board or the managing director might have. And a good company will always appreciate it, because it is in the interest of the company to have someone question hypothesis at the initial stage itself, rather than going ahead with the project and then learning the hard way by incurring huge losses. The other aspect is also true. In many cases, we act as brakes in the car, brakes are not there to stop the car always. They are there to give confidence to the driver that I can drive fast. There is a mechanism which will control the speed of the car when needed. So CFOs are obviously brakes as well. There is a third aspect also where CFOs can be a driving force also in many areas, because sometimes the company might be uh, in an inertia, right? And the CFO can be the one who can then do a competitive analysis and say that the competitor has done such and such thing, they are growing faster than us, and force the management to do an introspection, and drive that change internally. So those are the many roles that a strategic CFO can play in today's world.
Very nice. So you're saying that market intelligence, competition analysis, along with so number knowledge, that is a given, but also sales knowledge, market knowledge, business knowledge, marketing knowledge, and also market intelligence on what is happening in the world in that particular industry. What are the competitors doing? So all that is required. Not only the finance knowledge to be a CFO, to be a finance leader.
Yes, yes. So to be a successful leader in this day and age, I think we need to be good at many places. We need to dip our toes into many of these fields, and that brings a holistic viewpoint to the table as well. Otherwise, you just become a department head where you just speak your own language. Other people think of you as a department leader rather than a leadership at a company level. So
Correct.
to be a company level leader, you have to take responsibility for the P&L of the company
Mhm.
and the balance sheet of the company, which means that you have to look at competitors, you have to look at vendors, you have to speak with anyone and everyone, understand where the pain points are, where weaknesses are. So SWOT analysis हमने सबने किया है in our MBA, right? So as a CFO, we are probably the best placed to do a SWOT analysis internally for the company, because the CEO is mostly running to get a higher top line and might not have visibility in the balance sheet. They might have visibility on the P&L side, उनको profit समझ आता होगा, sales समझ आता होगा, but balance sheet में debtors, inventory level, all of that they might not be aware of, or they might not be looking at on a daily basis. As a CFO, we have the full field of view available in front of us,
Mhm.
and I think uh, as a member of the leadership team, it becomes a responsibility to drive those discussions and guide the company future into um, the right path.
So many interesting tangents are popping in my mind, because this is such an interesting discussion that I am having. So, with a CFO. So, but first, like we just talked about not being a yes man, being a devil's advocate, and also being a brake and also the driving force. So, some examples, if you could share during your career journey, where without naming the company if you want, where you acted in all or one or any of those three roles, and how did you uh, contribute to changing the direction of the company.
So I'll take a few examples. In one of my roles, I acted as a brake. So that was during COVID, right? The company obviously faced a lot of operational bottlenecks because everybody was working from home. Uh, there was no movement that was happening. There were lockdowns in place, and at that point in time, uh, the sustainability of the company itself became a challenge, right? So, and this is a very tough situation to be in, because how do you manage? What kind of decisions do you take? The survival of the company as a whole. We had around 800 families dependent on the company. So at that point in time, we waited for a few months, but when the situation did not show itself to be resolving, it was the finance department which had to start those difficult discussions and look very strategically at all the zones that we were operating in. And we decided to close down two zones, which were actually burning a lot of money, and there was no hope of immediate, uh, restitution in those areas. So those are very tough decisions where you have to be the bad guy, and actually people lose their livelihoods. But in those times, you have to think that you can either part ways with 100 employees, or you can close the company and lose all the 800 employees. So either 100 can lose their jobs or 800 can lose their jobs. So those are very tough situations. I pray to God we don't have to go into uh, ever see those scenarios again. But those are some situations where I've been in. There are other scenarios where the management might be thinking about a very massive capital expenditure, and they might not have thought through the entire implications of the capital expenditure, because sometimes when they are discussing it with their teams, they might think, ki, हाँ भाई, I will buy this machine and I will start this business. But as a CFO, when you do the financial model of the business, you realize कि इसमें जितना कैपेक्स है उसका 4 गुना तो वर्किंग कैपिटल रिक्वायरमेंट है, वो कहाँ से लाने का प्लान है. And when you ask those questions, uh, suddenly a light bulb goes on in the room. Okay, we were only thinking about the capex, but this is actually a working capital heavy business, not a capex heavy business. So the whole way of looking at a problem changes. That is not to discourage the capital expenditure, but to have a clear view and runway
Correct.
as to where the money will come from. The worst situation would be कि आपने capex करके लगा दिया, अब business करने के लिए पैसा नहीं है,
Correct.
right? So that is a worse situation to be in. So it is very good to have those discussions early on, even before you have spent even a single rupee, and have a strategic clarity that okay, we will get this money from this place, this money from this place. If we have to get debt, then we will also need equity. How much can you put in equity? How much can we put in debt? If we don't have money for equity, how can we raise equity? And have that planned out. There was another situation where we were spending a lot of money on R&D, and I forced the management team to come out with a R&D implementation plan. So basically, to have a clear view of what the outcomes are expected of R&D. So these are areas where it is very easy to burn money,
Mm-hmm.
where it is, when you are into R&D phase, you are testing new things every day.
Correct.
Unless you hold yourself accountable to one thing, it is very easy to get distracted.
Correct.
आज ये देख लिया, कल वो देख लिया, परसों वो देख लिया. At the end of 6 months, nothing to show,
Correct.
right? So those are the kind of things that are interesting, and you actually, as a CFO, you have to take the task upon yourself. People will generally not ask you
Mm-hmm.
to do this, but there is nobody else who
Mm-hmm.
would do this other than you.
Correct. Very powerful. Very powerful. And so this is how a CFO is actually one of the most powerful leaders in the CEO's team or the managing director's team. Because see, I'll tell you in my interaction with the CEOs in my last job, when so he would not trust sales. I was in sales, and so finance would one department that he would relatively trust more because whatever issues he may have had, but finance was still more because sales, his pet dialogue was, "ये तो सब झूठ बोलते हैं." कुछ भी, just to convince. So that's very nice, and now I understand the logic that why finance is more trusted, because they have the data to back whatever they are saying. So see, we have talked about that to be a successful, you have to have the knowledge, you have to have the learning mindset, you have to have the business knowledge, market intelligence. But you also mentioned that you took a risk from from a a well-known brand to join a startup, and which was one of the reasons why you reached the leadership level faster. So risk-taking ability, and this is one learning ability, learning mindset, like you said. So these are some of the softer skills which generally people don't talk about. So what have been your other secrets of success apart from taking risk and learning mindset?
So, in terms of risk and learning mindset, CFOs are generally considered to be very risk averse. They are considered to be very conservative. But that's not the right way of looking at this role, at least in today's day and age. I remember there is an interview in which Jeff Bezos says why he started and how he thought through his decision of starting Amazon. And his decision was based on putting himself a few years out into his old age. And he said the biggest risk I was carrying was to not start Amazon, continue on my current path. And when I am old, I imagine myself to be very displeased with my choices in life.
Correct.
And therefore, I decided to start Amazon. So in my life, I have done that quite a lot. I was right out of college. I was working with Fidelity, which is a reputed name, wonderful company. Had a beautiful run there. But then, in a large company, you are slotted into teams and you have roles, and there is a growth path ahead of you, which generally is very linear. Every 2, 3 years, you will grow up in rank, and I could see the growth path in front of me. It would have taken me at least 15 years to become a group leader, not at the company level, just a group level. And then another, so the then CFO or the then CEO had taken around 25 years
Correct.
to reach at that level. I, being a younger guy, wanted to do that quicker. I didn't want to spend my entire life to reach a level in my old age and then enjoy it only for a couple of years. And I was hungry. I decided to take a pay cut. I took a severe pay cut and decided to join a startup. And it was trial by fire because there was nobody in a large company. You are accustomed to a lot of processes. You are accustomed to a lot of treatment, right? कोई चाय भी लाके दे रहा है कोई everything is happening. And when you join a startup, there is nobody.
Correct.
सुबह आके लाइट खोल देना, रात को जाते हुए स्विच ऑफ कर देना, right? So there is nobody, and you are on your own. So I had to um, really struggle for a few months in the startup space because it was a drastic change for me. But then you start picking up the ropes, you start, you find your tune and you start to dance to it, and then you get comfortable in it. So it is a big risk, no doubt, but I think taking those risks earlier on in life is easier. The more entrenched you get into uh, a comfortable position, the difficult it is because of inertia to take those risks. I can't imagine taking such risks at 50 years of age, right? Unless I win a lottery somewhere and then money becomes, no problem at all. At a young age, I could afford to do that. So I took those risks. By God's grace, I was able to deliver in those roles and I was able to survive and thrive in situations where very seasoned leaders were struggling. And that is how I got into leadership roles um, in places where I got them.
And what about learning mindset apart from risk taking?
So learning mindset is again whenever a new situation comes up, right? There are two ways of reacting to it. The first way is what probably majority of the people do over their coffee sessions, which is to bitch about the company and bitch about the boss, right? That is the problem mindset, right? And I am as guilty of it as anybody else. I have also done it, right? But the right way of approaching it is very calculatively and identify the root cause. what is the root cause that is causing an issue right now, and try to address it, right? People are goal oriented mostly,
Correct.
right? If you are achieving something for the company and you are making your boss look good, there is no reason why he or she would dislike you, right? So try to be the most trusted guy in the room, take more responsibility, have a learning mindset in the way that that a new challenge, and challenges are available plenty. आजकल लोग बात करते हैं AI will solve all the challenges. I don't see that happening.
Correct.
There will be more challenges
Correct.
rather than fewer challenges. Uh, मतलब I don't see any lack of work. I
Correct.
see more work coming every day, irrespective of whatever technology comes, right? And most of the work is unstructured in nature. It is not defined, and it is for the taker to do so. So I gave you an example of I having designed a survey.
Correct.
I was a finance guy. I was not expected to do that,
Correct.
right? But there was a big debate going on in the company whether we should invest a lot of money and start a new zone in a new state or
Mm-hmm.
not.
Mm-hmm.
If you can be the guy who can answer that question decisively
Mm-hmm.
and quantitatively, obviously that differentiates you from the 100 other people in the company, and you become a known name for solving tough problems. And it was nothing of a rocket science that I did. हमने सबने MBA में पढ़ा था कि भाई एक सर्वे किया जा सकता है. I did that survey. I designed that survey form. I went and surveyed 10 people on my own. Then I asked for a guy, one person from the sales team, who was allocated to me for 1 month, and I made him fill the survey, right? So I had 100 responses. Now this is 100 responses which nobody can dispute,
Correct.
right? And I took that, I took some insights out of that survey, and I presented it to the management team. So instantly, a decision uh, which was
Right.
what I feel versus what you feel becomes a chart based a quantitative kind of a analysis. ज्यादा से ज्यादा क्या होगा? They will say 100 responses are not good, or the survey you designed was not good. So we will ask them, okay, sir, you tell me what questions should I add to this, and how many more responses will you want?
Correct.
Those are the two things that can happen, right? They will say the survey was not good. Okay, sir, tell me what was the issue with the survey. I will fix it, and we will do a version 2. But you have suddenly transformed the debate into a quantitative thing. AI is not going to solve this, right? Because nobody is telling you to do it. Nobody told me that, Pulkit, go and design a survey. I did it because I saw an opportunity. This was a strategic uh, question in front of the company, which could have meant two very different options for the company's future, and I decided to do it. And this is possible only when you're keeping an eye out on opportunities, and it is possible only if you have the skills to
Correct.
tap into when that opportunity comes.
Correct.
To have those skills, you have to have the learning mindset. तो you cannot be कि भाई मैं तो finance वाला हूँ, I will not do surveys. मैं तो ये तो मेरा फील्ड ही नहीं है. You
Correct.
have to at least know कि सर्वे कभी करना पड़ जाए तो कैसे कर सकते.
One important lesson which I take from this is staying true to your convictions, even when there is pressure from the other senior stakeholders. And but not just to, like you said, you don't have to be a yes man. So you have to stay true to your convictions, what you feel is right, and then you have to have that ability to go out of your comfort zone and do things which you are not meant to do or which you have not done earlier, and then present it or help the other stakeholders take a holistic decision and realize that it's not me versus you, it's the data which is. So these are very powerful lessons, and nobody would have expected finance professionals to be good at that.
Yes, absolutely. And basically, we have to be collaborative in our approach. So, politics, will not take you very far
Correct.
in the corporate world.
Correct.
That is what I believe. I the more I work with senior leaders, the more I work with business people, the more my conviction grows that it is a trust-based society,
Correct.
right? We are making million-dollar deals based on a phone call because we have worked with that person earlier. Most of the senior level leadership hirings are happening because we know someone, or there is someone in our network who knows somebody. There is a referral that has happened. These are trust based relationships, and you flourish because people trust you, right? Unlike a lot of web series and TV shows, how they portray the corporate world, it is not like that. It is a trust-based relationship. People have to actually trust you, and trust your decision making, and trust that you are thinking in the well-being of the company itself.
Correct.
So that is how things operate. One way of doing it is being I follow the Bhagavad Gita quite a lot. So, focusing on the task at hand and trying to be objective. So, those are the things I think and people see through all the hidden motives. If you design a survey in a way, or you design your questions if you have loaded questions, right? People are not stupid, especially at the top. People see through, they have seen through life,
Correct.
right? Even though they might not say it, but they will realize what you're trying to do. And and believe me, things will come back to bite you at one point or another.
Correct.
So, so I think,
Very powerful. And see, for the sake of the young listeners, in my around 29 years of experience, so first 15 years were with the corporate world, and there were so many colleagues who were into politics, and they would ask me to complain, and I complained also to my about my boss to my super boss, and then I realized that the idea was that both of us, he moves past both of us in some so, but generally what I've seen, those kind of people who are into politics, they don't rise beyond the mid level. They try to, then they are pushed back, or they fall down, or something happens, the politics doesn't work. That's very, very apt that you said, Pulkit. See, apart from that, you also mentioned that as a leader, the communication ability, the interpersonal skills, the collaborative approach, and so that you enter any room, and you can see that what is happening. So those softer skills, some thoughts on that, that why as a finance professional also you need to brush up your communication so that you can explain a complex idea, a financial idea, into simple terms, and also have those interpersonal skills so that people feel comfortable. So some thoughts on that, and how can young finance professionals develop that?
so communication, of course, when I was in school, uh, our principal was uh, very big on communications, right? To the extent that we had a morning assembly, and he used to make sure that every person in the school got at least an opportunity to speak at least once every 6 months,
Very nice.
right? So that I think played well, and then I got some good opportunities in my college to be involved in literary kind of events and all. Um, but I think communication, I was lucky to be, involved in such activities, and be decent at communication. Although I think there is plenty of room for growth for me in this area as well. But then that said, communication is a very important area, not just for leadership roles, but life in general, right? Even between a husband and a wife, both might love each other, but if they are not communicating, right, it is going to be a damaging thing for the relationship, right? When we are talking about communication, we are not talking about excellent spoken English or your ability to write poems or, using flowery language. We are not talking about that. We are talking about your ability to put into words a simple thought, what you are thinking. And believe me, a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people uh, are not able to put their thoughts into words. and simple words. We don't need, I've read somewhere there are around 800 English words that comprise of around 90%
Correct.
of the overall language that is spoken majority of the time, right?
Correct.
So that is it. That is about it. But we have to be able to string together a sentence which makes sense and which is exactly what we are trying to say. So why is that important? Because
Can
the other people are not mind readers.
So can you give some
They,
example on how a complex financial statement or terminology can be explained in a simple term to a layman?
of course, if you look at a financial statement, right? If you look at the balance sheet of a company, you will see a lot of numbers. Most of those numbers will not make sense,
Correct.
right? Or if you look at a legal terminology, it will not make sense, right? So if I tell you you are very learned, but suppose you were not knowledgeable of finance. If I tell you the accrual of the company has been X and X,
Correct.
it does not mean anything, right?
Even
But if
even
I
now,
tell you
even now, it doesn't mean anything to me.
yes, yes. Or if I tell you in legal speak that the severability clause in the agreement does, this so and so, right? It does not make sense for a common person. Not even for a common person, but somebody who is not entrenched into the finance or the legal world, it will not make sense, even though we are using English words.
Correct.
Now, how do you make it simple enough so that the other person who might not be as into finance or as into law can understand what you're trying to say. So accrual is nothing but what you are earning, right? So you can use very simple words. This is what we have earned so far. This is the impact of the top line on the bottom line. And that is basically accrual, right? Similarly, for severability is basically a legal clause which says that uh, one clause can be removed and still the agreement will be valid, right? So these are simple things that you can say
Hmm.
to make yourself understood across the table, because across the table the person might have a very different history, they might have a very different background, and you have to always respect it. You cannot assume that you are greater or inferior to the other person. We have to be equals, we have to be respectful, and try to make sure that we are able to explain ourselves.
Correct. So, would you suggest that before going into finance meetings or before going into meetings with the other departments or group meetings with other departments, a finance professional should maybe prepare for it, writing down the thoughts concisely in a manner which would make it easier for others to understand, so that the end objective of meeting the company's goals and taking the right strategic decision becomes easier for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is important in today's world, especially because most of the leaders in a company are busy people
Correct.
and they don't have time to hear ramblings. They have very short attention spans because there is a lot of stuff that is on their mind,
Correct.
which is where the concept of a elevator pitch comes from. You have to you have to put across your idea within a few seconds. Otherwise, you will lose that opportunity. So it
Correct.
is always good to have preparation beforehand to make sure that the thought makes sense logically. I usually write down my thoughts. I type down my thoughts so that I am sure what I want to say, right? And then the communication becomes easier. Gradually, over time, once you have done it enough, uh, uh, it becomes a habit. So you can many times, go with the flow. So writing down will become less and less required because you will start thinking along those lines. But even today, if there is an important meeting, if there is an important thing which I need to get straight for my thought process, I think writing it down and being prepared is the best way possible.
Very nice, very powerful. What about interpersonal skills and the collaborative approach and being approachable? How to develop that.
So again, that is about people. A lot of people think that a CFO is a numbers guy. He doesn't care about people. He or she, uh, you know, uh, is ruthless in that way. Of course, you have to be goal oriented, but you don't have to be ruthless. You have to understand that at the end of every number, there is a person, right? If we are talking about sales, that sales has come through a salesperson. There is blood and sweat that the salesperson has spent to get that number. If there is an expense of some kind, or if there is an improvement or deterioration of some kind, there is a jubilance or a frustration in someone's head regarding that number because it is their daily bread and butter. They are doing it on a daily basis. So many times it is important when you spot it at a overall level कि भाई ठीक है sales में growth नहीं आ रही है. You have to actually understand the perspective of the person who is driving it at the lower level, be involved. That does not mean कि आप sell करने खुद ही उतर जाओ, right? But it does mean that you have to understand the other person's viewpoint. Where are they struggling? You have to understand both the said and the unsaid. Many a times people will not say things out aloud, but they will tell you with their actions or with their emotions what the actual problem is, right? I'll give you a very simple example. We were in the past, a few years ago, there was a discussion happening on salary increases, right? And it's a people matter, but it's also a finance matter because there is a budget that we have to work on, and the company was had not done very well, right? So so there was a budget which was, let's say, 6-7%, right? That was the budget, and a very senior leader gave that budget to team leaders. He was, this is the salary increase we are going to go ahead with this time. And obviously there was an uproar,
Correct.
right? Because everybody thinks कि यार 5-6% क्या होता है, कुछ भी नहीं होता है, right? And I happened to be called into that meeting, and I happened to have some numbers at hand. I told them जब when there was a good year, then this average was 8%, right? So we are talking about a 2% decline on an average. That does not mean everybody will get this number.
Correct.
It means that somebody can get 20% also, but there will be somebody who will get zero also. So the good performers need not worry about it. This is an average number, right? But in the heat of things, a lot of people who actually know all of these concepts don't think of it, right? They forget it. उनको लगा कि भाई हमें ही 5% मिल रहा है, हमें ही 6% मिल रहा है, राइट? मैंने तो इतना सब कुछ किया है, आई हाउ कैन आई गेट 6%? सो इट इज अबाउट रीडिंग द रूम. वंस यू अंडरस्टैंड कि दीज गाइज, एंड दे विल नॉट से कि मुझे 6% क्यों मिल रहा है. दे विल से नो नो यू आर चीटिंग, यू नो वी हैव डन मच बेटर, these numbers are wrong. They will never say कि I want 20%, right? But you have to read the room. You have to understand ki where is the concern coming from. Even though those team leaders are speaking as if they are concerned about the numbers, at the back of their mind they are probably thinking about themselves and their strong performers कि उनको क्या जवाब देंगे कि भाई तुमने इतना सब काम किया है, why should you only get 6%? So when I clarified that, and suddenly the whole tone of that room changed because two things to keep in mind. In a good year, it was 8%. Now it is 6%. So it is only 2% lower on an average. And still, you get a lot of room to play within that. These are big budgets, right? So you can give somebody 20%, you can give somebody 2%, and work around that way. So all your good performers are still rewarded the way they were usually rewarded. And that is how you read the room and solve that problem. Otherwise, it becomes a departmental fight, it becomes a labor strike kind of a thing, and it becomes all of those kind of problems.
So keeping a calm mind is also very important for a finance professional and not getting emotional apart from understanding the room.
Yes, yes. And eventually, you build a reputation. So once you do it a few times, people will actually look forward to having you in the room so that you can bring sense into the discussion. That is how you gain trust and become the most trusted person in the room.
Very nice. So again, this is so very powerful, Pulkit, that people will listen to you only when you have that credibility, when you have that trust, and you build that trust when you actually go out on sales calls to understand the, or you do those surveys, or you visit and for the geographical expansion, and you talk with data, and you are impartial, and you build that credibility. So for a young finance professional, apart from the finance knowledge, what is coming across very powerfully is that you have to have that credibility.
Yes, of course. Uh, leadership, we all talk about the pyramid, right? Where as you go up, there are limited roles and it's lonely at the top. You, but another way of looking at it is that in a pyramid, there are many ways to approach the top. You don't have to be just a finance guy. You don't have to be just a sales guy to be a leader. A leader is a leader. It just happens what their background is. I have seen sales leaders who are exceptionally good at finance. I have seen marketing guys who understand legal, right? Because marketing में भी legal चलता है जब आप packaging design करते हो, it is all legal.
Correct?
And if somebody has taken it upon themselves, they have immersed themselves into it, there is a good chance that they have started understanding the legal speak also because they have interacted वो label design करते time they have interacted with enough legal guys to understand basic. Of course, they will not go and practice in a high court or a supreme court, but they have enough understanding that they will be able to find their way. At least they will have a few legal mentors whom they can call and understand if something gets stuck. And the same thing happens on the finance side. I am not an expert salesperson, but over time you get a good idea of what sales is all about. Over time you get a good idea of what HR is all about. And that is how you become a holistic personality, how you are able to interact and manage a lot of people, manage unknown and uncharted territories. So that is how it happens.
So we are coming almost to the close of the time limit that we had set, Pulkit. So one final question. So how do you advise a young finance professional to plan his or her career? See, there are different subdomains in finance. There is corporate finance. There is so many other things. So how should they plan their first 5 years, then the next 5 years, then the next 5 years? Some thoughts on that.
I have had a very unconventional career. Uh, I have only this to say, I can speak from my experience. I have always tried to follow my heart, and that has led me to places which have been very challenging, but also very rewarding. For a young professional, I think a good thing on their side is that they have time on their side. They can take big risks, right? If you have a home loan at 40 years of age, you will not be able to take many risks. That
Right.
is for sure, right? But if you are a 22-year-old and you are just out of college, you can take risks, right? Because even if you fail in a 2 year time span, you will be a 24-year-old. You will find something else to do. There will not be a problem. A lot of people get too comfortable too quickly, and a lot of people stop learning after college.
Correct.
So they compartmentalize learning कि भाई learning तो सिर्फ college तक होती है उसके बाद I have to become a money making machine. I think that is the wrong approach. The third thing I would say, I see a lot of people are distracted these days. So
Mhm.
in the times of social media and a lot of avenues where you can waste your time, I see a lot of talented people wasting their time. So, uh, which I try not to. I try to be more intentional in what I do. I think in today's days and age, a lot of people, let's say they are preparing for an exam, they will spend 3 hours a day on a social media discussing कि भाई एग्जाम में क्या हुआ कैसा हुआ, rather than actually studying for the exam. And we've all seen this, right, in our generation as well as in our kids' generation. Those 3 hours could be spent well, and that happens in offices also. So for a young professional, I would suggest be very intentional in what you do.
Very
Uh,
nice.
take take find and take work which nobody has asked you to do, because that differentiates you, right? And don't be afraid of speaking up. Obviously, be respectful. Treat others as equal. Don't treat them either as very superior or very inferior to you. Speak your mind. Be respectful. Be data driven, and take risks, because life is short. I am, you know, a strong proponent of the philosophy that life is short. So let's do things that that we can do during the time we have. That's what I follow.
No, that's very powerful. So the imagery which you gave of Jeff Bezos, that the biggest risk is not taking a risk and at the end of your life regretting that why didn't I take the risk? So on that note, thank you, Pulkit. Thanks for sharing so many insights. I'm sure the people who are going to watch this or listen to this are going to benefit so much. Thank you for taking out time, Pulkit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amit ji. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed this discussion.